Hello my soccer universe, we had a jam-packed week of Italian football with Coppa Italia in the midweek. We know at least one finalist already, the other one is still all to play for, and a Serie A round that really had it all. Maybe the goals are kind of falling a little bit, but with both title contenders losing points, Inter really surprisingly so, Napoli probably got lucky, and what a goal by Ndoye. We had Lazio handing Atalanta a shock defeat. Atalanta really in freefall at this moment, whereas Juve probably have solidified now under Tudor, managing a 1-1 draw at high-flying Roma. And then we had the absolute madness of the 2-2 draw between Milan and Fiorentina, a game that was so open, could have been 10 goals total as well. So, lots to look back to, and we're gonna start, of course, in the midweek with the Coppa Italia. The weekend win over Venezia was only a blip for Bologna, who really turned up the style in that Coppa Italia semi-final first leg game against Empoli. Orsolini opening scoring or in 23rd minute, then Dalinga in the 29th adds another one and completes his brace in the 51st minute. Bologna undeniable and with more than a foot already in the final. Meanwhile, the other semi-final had a Milan derby, and of course Milan did show up in that one, and it was a rather even affair and maybe even less cagey than one would have expected. True, Inter were controlling the game as they have done in all the derbies, however Milan were always gonna hit them, especially through the center. Early chances did fall to Inter, with Mike Maignan pulling out some good saves. There was one chance then for Theo Hernandez and a pretty big one for Rafa Leao. Arguably the biggest chance in the first half, but there was also a pretty good opportunity for Inter there as well. It goes level and scores into halftime. Right after the half, it was again going through the middle for Fana, playing it into Abraham, who opens the scoring in the 47th minute. However, that really angered Inter quite a lot, who then got the upper hand, almost immediately equalized. They get then the equalizer when Correa finds Çalhanoğlu at the edge of the box, who unleashes a shot that Mike Maignan probably could do better the way it comes on him. However, it was a great technique by Çalhanoğlu as well. Definitely an eye-catcher, that one. I hate that guy, needless to say. Then the game kind of fizzled out. There was only one more chance. I think Leao curling it just past the post, and so it ends level on scores. Will all be decided in the return leg in 3 weeks' time. We could have seen a huge twist in a title race this weekend. Alas, Inter remained 3 points ahead of Napoli, but we could see that there's some kinks in the armor of Inter, because Inter went to Parma and had an easy 2-0 lead, exactly what I would have expected. Darmian opening scoring in the 15th minute, Thuram doubling it up in the 45th, probably could have been even more. However, due to man management, Simone Inzaghi also had to make a few changes, and he took off all his big stars, Di Marco, Çalhanoğlu, Lautaro, and that probably played into Parma's hand. I actually expected Parma to put in a valiant performance, but coming up short. Well, they got something out of the game, because Bernabé with a great goal pulled one back in the 60th, and just 9 minutes later Ondrejka got the equalizer. Then it could have gone either way. There was a big miss by Thuram also. In the end, it ends in a 2-2 draw, where Inter probably would have banked 3. And so Napoli had a big chance of cutting the Inter's lead down to a single point, and they duly obliged, playing a really great first half at Bologna. A Bologna team that is really making a push for another Champions League berth. Anguissa opened the scoring by plowing through the Bologna defense, going past the goalie and getting it home. Politano probably could have doubled it just before the half. He seemingly had already rounded the goalie Raviglia, who had to come off for injured Skorupski, but Raviglia bounces back and gets the ball off Politano. But the second half, I don't know what happened to Napoli. It was similar what we have seen by Napoli against Milan. They suddenly turn it off, and it was Bologna who, like Milan, are the comeback kids in the Serie A season and are pushing Napoli to the brink and get an equalizer. Absolute brilliant piece of skill. It was Odgaard who plays a ball back to Ndoye. The ball goes slightly behind Ndoye, but he reaches back, and with his back heel gets it then via the inside of the bar into the net, and the ball takes even bounce, because from the bar it bounces before the line but then gets the bounce over the line. A really stunning goal, I gotta say. And then Bologna really had the upper hand. There was a huge miss by Castro late on, but then the final seconds were on all Napoli. There was a free kick by Raspadori that is blocked, and then twice Napoli had the chance to snatch an unlikely winner at that point. And again, it's Groundhog Day for Milan. After a real team performance against Inter, and you should play Inter all the time because at least then you put in a performance, you again decide, well, we just go to be a little bit lackadaisical, we don't need to really defend, and we find ourselves down after 10 minutes 2-0 to Fiorentina. A Jar own goal, although this was all Albert Gudmundsson. And then Dodo assists Moise Kean in the 10th minute. Where was anybody marking either of these players? And Jar puts even Dodo onside. So absolute Schambolic defending. You're 2-0 down. And then what does Conceição do? He brings on even more strikers, and suddenly it starts to work. I mean, before the Pulisic assists already Abraham to pull one back in the 23rd, and the game is open, going back and forth. But it also, as we say, Ranieri scored a 3-1, and it was not given because of a foul on Pulisic in the build-up that was a little bit shaky. So it could have been 3-1 Fiorentina at the half-time. Second half, more strikers come on. Jimenez did not look all that good, unfortunately, and even had to come off later with an injury. But Tomori plays a pass into Luka Jovic in the 64th minute. The scores are level, and now it really seemed like everyone can score. And can I just say what an absolute mad game this was? There was no midfield. The game ended 2-2, but it could have been 5-5. There were great saves by both goalies in there, and another disallowed goal for Fiorentina as well. Dodo, this time he was offside. It was just one of those games that if you're a neutral, you will love this one forever. But if you're a fan of either of these teams, you just can come to one conclusion. Points dropped, and absolutely needlessly so. I actually would think that Milan are lucky to get out with that 1 point. Lazio get a huge bounce-back win, a 1-0 away at Atalanta, an Atalanta team that seems to be in free fall. They were title contenders not too long ago, and now they even need to hold on to a Champions League spot, and it doesn't seem unlikely that they might even fall further in the current form. It was not a great game. The winning goal exemplified that. It was from a kick-out from Provedel that the ball comes to Deleba Giroud, who just goes through the Atalanta defense, more plowing through, and also a comedy of errors on the Atalanta side. And he then passes over to Isaacson, who can slot it home in the empty net. Maybe this will ignite Lazio to make potentially a run in the Europa League. Lazio also managed to pull 2 points away from Roma, who took on Juve Sunday evening in a very entertaining 1-1 draw. Locatelli giving Juve the lead in the 40th minute. Juve actually were, I thought, the more dangerous team in the first half. Second half, Roma came out. They get the equalizer in the 49th through Shomurodov, who more or less wills it over the line. And then, both teams kind of battling. Roma maybe having a little bit more of the game, but it ends in a 1-1 draw that probably will not help either of these sides all that much. Let's run through the remaining results. A late Zanoli goal gives Genoa the 3 points over Udine. As expected, Como also get 3 points for Monza. However, they have to come back because Motta opened the scoring for Monza. But then Ikone and Diaby in the first half already turned around, and then a brilliant goal by Voivoda gets the final 3-1 scoreline. Same old story for Venezia. They have a lead at Lecce through a Gallo own goal. However, Baschirotto in the 65th equalizes, and so Venezia only pick up a single point, and that's just too little. The less said about Empoli v Cagliari, the better. However, Empoli at least get a point in their quest for survival. And then we also had an eventful match between Torino and Verona, where it all ignited in the second half. Adams had a penalty, sees it saved, and then 2 minutes later, Sar gets the go-ahead goal for Verona. Big howler by Milinkovic-Savic. However, Elif Elmas then in the 67th, so just 3 minutes later, gets at least a point for Torino, and then Ricci is also sent off for a rather rough tackle. As I said in the summary, Napoli missed a huge chance of cutting the lead of Inter down to a single point. However, again, I think a point at Bologna currently is not a bad result. Still 3 points, still advantage Inter. Inter do have the harder schedule though, and that might play into it. We already saw how Inter are trying to manage minutes, and thus they lost 2 points at Parma as well. However, it's really the race for this final Champions League spot that's heating up, and in the current form that Atalanta are in, it is not unlikely that Atalanta will fall out of the top 4 and suddenly another spot would open up. For now, Atalanta 1 point ahead of Bologna, 1 point ahead of Juve, and there's also Lazio in there. Lazio still in Europe. Roma and Fiorentina with their draws probably have let go a teeny bit. No chance for Milan anymore, I would argue. The only way that they will make it into Europe is probably through the Coppa, but you will have to beat Inter first, which, is not that unlikely given how Milan like to play Inter this season. But then also beat Bologna in a final. I don't know. I don't quite know. Maybe it's even better if they don't qualify for Europe. On the bottom teams don't get enough points. I mean, the point for Parma against Inter was a huge one, but it's still a single point. And 3 points away from the relegation zone. Empoli at least picked up a point. Venezia just 2 little points. I don't think that Venezia will make it unless they go on a winning streak. Monza more or less down. Lecce, Empoli, I think those are the 2 that will go for the last relegation spot, and Parma have to be careful to not get dragged into that one. I think Hellas and Cagliari at the moment are safe. On the face of it, there's only one huge game this weekend, and that's the Roman Derby on Sunday evening. That game looked a little bit bigger last week when they were level on points, but Roma better win if they want to get back into the chase for the European spots, potentially even Champions League. And Roma are the informed team, although I don't want to discount Lazio. There's another big game between Atalanta and Bologna, and I think Bologna's win at Atalanta in the Coppa kind of really started the slide for Atalanta. So not a foregone conclusion, that one, by any stretch of the imagination. The big name teams have relatively easy draws. I mean, it will be utter madness between Udine and Milan, and I don't expect more than a point for Milan there. Inter should slaughter Cagliari, but never say that. Similar goes for Juve against Lecce, and then Napoli take on Empoli. However, they also have 2 suspended players in Anguissa and Di Lorenzo. So that concludes my review of this absolute mad Serie A and Coppa Italia week. From a Milan perspective, I have to say I'm not sure whether it is good to go into Europe or not. I mean, yes, for a team like Milan, Europe should be a given. And if you win the Coppa Italia, you go into Europa League, a trophy that you have not won yet. I keep hearing that for Milan it is not enough to go in the Conference League. And yes, the money will not be good. However, I don't think it's the worst thing in there, because I think you might be the biggest name team in that competition. And I could see Milan winning another trophy and see what they did for Roma. At least the excitement will come back. Although for Milan, only 2 trophies really count. That's Serie A and that's the Champions League. Neither of one will happen this year, and very unlikely for last year as well. Please let me know your thoughts on this past week. Drop a line below in the comments. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos like these. Talk to you soon about more things in my Serie A universe. Bye! Hey there! I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, here are some videos and playlists that you may enjoy too. Also, please consider subscribing to my channel and hit the little bell icon so you get notified whenever something happens in my soccer universe. And with that, have a wonderful day. Bye!